It's been a tough time to make a Souls-like action RPG these days. The market is stuffed to the brim with them, and standing out from the pack gets tougher and tougher every year. After 6 hours with Thymesia, the dark fantasy hack and slasher by Overborder Studio, I'm not quite sure it'll be the one to make waves. There's a handful of differences, both aesthetically and mechanically, that make it more than just a carbon copy of genre staples like Bloodborne, but they require patience and a lot of trial and error to truly discover in earnest. As an agent codenamed Corvus, you slice, claw, and stab your way through your own scattered memories of a kingdom that has fallen to calamity due to an alchemical plague. The location I explored, the plague-infested Sea of Trees, was interesting if not a little familiar. The forest, covered in boils and noxious gas, made a striking first impression, but the winding tree paths rarely revealed anything new outside of its initial introduction. The vibes are spooky for sure, but haunted swampy forest is a pretty familiar trope nowadays. Combat in Thymesia heavily favors aggression. Corvus is fleet of foot and quick with his blades, opting to overwhelm enemies with a storm of saber strikes and dodge out of range just before the enemy can strike back. There's no stamina here, so attacking and dodging are limited by combo strings and animations. This can sometimes feel too limiting because once you started an action, you're committed to it until it's over. This is doubly the case for the Deflect, your default defensive measure. In combination with its tiny effective window and awkward wind-up, parrying is a skill that takes an outsized amount of practice to develop. It was time that felt poorly spent, since successful parries don't do anything except prevent damage done to you and return a small amount of it back to the attacker, unlike in genre contemporaries, where a good parry opens enemies up for counterattacks. I was almost always better off just avoiding attacks altogether, because the risk of missing a parry is far greater than the reward of landing it successfully. Enemy health comes in two forms. Doing damage to the white bar reveals a green bar under it. So long as there's green left, the white will regenerate. Both your lightsaber attacks and heavy claw attacks damage both bars, but the former is better for white damage, and the latter better for green. The key to cleaning up enemies efficiently then is weaving these two types of attacks together to whittle them down as you dodge their counter assaults. It's fun to a point, but the whole system seems unnecessarily convoluted, especially since light and heavy attacks don't naturally chain together the way other frantic action games like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry do. Many of the most interesting combat actions are unlocked in the trait tree, with points earned by leveling up at beacons. This is where you can really define a playstyle for your Corvus, turning his claw attack into a multi-hit combo, or adding a teleporting follow-up attack to his long-range feather darts. There are a lot of options to consider, and luckily you can reallocate spent points in any beacon, which gives you the freedom to try new things. Some talents, like widening the parry window or exchanging your deflect with a block, feel like options that could be added to Corvus's default kit and make the early game a way more forgiving experience without compromising the challenge that the chaotic combat can create. My favorite feature in Thymesia are the plague weapons. Collecting plague weapon shards from enemies allows you to unlock and equip a plague weapon associated with them. These weapons allow you to unleash powerful attacks at the expense of plague energy to poke holes in enemies with a spectral halberd, or control the area around you with a wide sweeping scythe. You can use shards to upgrade weapons after unlocking them as well. These start out as straight stat buffs, but can eventually add new functionality to the attack altogether. You can reave one-time use versions of these plague weapons with your claw attacks, which I found very useful against tougher elites or bosses that had plague weapon abilities that I found very handy. It took some time, but after sticking with it, I found Thymesia to be enjoyable in its current rough form. Combat is fast and furious, but unforgiving in the early going. Learning its peculiar timing and rhythm can be a grind, but once you level up enough to engage with its steep upgrade system and powerful plague weapons, there's a unique action experience to be had, even if it is over a backdrop of a mostly unremarkable setting. For more on the latest Soulsborne games, check out the Story of Elden Ring developer From Software. And for everything else in the world of video games, stick with IGN.